Yo, this is the Ancient Texan. I'm gonna do something called Supply Chain for Dummies. My books up here, I've got Excel for Dummies, Quick Basic for Dummies. I've used similar books over the years. So I listen to people talk about supply chains and I look at our tariff policy and I go, please excuse me if you've got this because it's really very straightforward. And I'm also going to cover a couple of other basic stuff, not a lot of detail, but just a little background for supply chains. Now, I'm going to show you the what we're going to be looking at most of the time. And it's this picture right here, supply chain basics. And I guess I could call that supply chain for dummies. We're going to come back to this, but just a little touch up on energy and stuff first. Um, Most of the energy we're making right now, 85-90% of it comes from oil, fossil fuels, natural gas. We had conventional oil that peaked 1970 or so. And then we got a hit out of Alaska and Prudhoe Bay, and it started declining down to about 2010, and then we learned how to do shale oil and fracking, and we got this little peak at the end. Most of our energy comes from oil. It's a gift Mother Nature gave us. It took millions of years for Mother Nature to make it, and we're going to blow through it in a couple of decades. A couple of generations. Here's a statement that's pretty simple, but it's important if you're going to understand supply chains. Almost all supply chains start in Mother Earth, and you can include in that the oceans. But most of it's land based, but there some of our supply chains include the ocean. The small exceptions to this would be sunshine and asteroids are exceptions to where some of our supply chains begin. But they're not big exceptions, and we're not going to talk about them. All that we consume comes from Mother Earth. Mother Earth, again, including the oceans. Pretty profound, right? Energy is required to mold the gifts of Mother Earth into products we consume. Sometimes the energy might be as simple as, bending over and picking up an egg, cracking it on the ground, and slurping the egg out. It can be pretty simple, but energy is required to take all of these gifts from Mother Earth. The biggest gift we've been given, again, is oil. It even takes in, energy to suck that oil out of the ground. Fracking takes a lot more energy than conventional oil. All that we consume comes from Mother Earth. All consumption is limited by the amount of available energy. Our standard of living is limited by the amount of available energy. Look at energy consumption in the United States, a person living in the United States, and then a person living even, say, Mexico or Canada. They consume less energy, they have a lower standard of living. But if you want to go a step further, go to Africa. Our standard of living is limited by the amount of available energy. Energy that we've taken and wrapped our hands around and know how to use. That's what I'm calling available. That we have inside our grasp and know how to use. So, kind of a simple formula is energy plus material from the earth equals a product. Our style of living depends on cheap energy. These are kind of all saying the same thing, and they're pretty basic stuff. And just to refresh you where all our energy is coming from right now, 85% of it. It peaked around 1970 from the conventional oil. A lot of people think we've peaked on conventional oil, on tight oil that comes from fracking, that we've already peaked at it. If not, we're right at the peak. If you could draw this plot to the present, you'd see that it's rounded and started back down. That tight oil, if I had a better plot, you'd see that we're right at what looks like we're at the peak of tight oil. And when the tight oil is gone, it's all gone. When that tight oil is gone, the total amount of energy that we have available in the United States will start declining. I'm not talking just about fossil fuel. I'm talking about total energy. All the renewables, and they're not really renewables, they're rebuildable. Like if you make a windmill, it doesn't last forever. It's a machine and you have to rebuild it. They're rebuildable energy. Same with solar. As fast as we're going, our total increase in energy is not even being met by renewable. This is another conversation. This is about supply chains. But another conversation to have is what's happening to our energy supply and how is that going to affect our standard of living moving forward. But that's not today's conversation. Today's conversation is about supply chain basics. Got a little plot here, and it shows Earth and energy at the bottom. Kind of the theme of what we've just been talking about. Over on the left, we have minerals, oil and gas in the center, and agriculture on the right. Everything that comes from the earth. And it's a little bit of a simplification to call it minerals, oil, and gas in agriculture, but not much. I would call minerals and that whole left corner as a supply chain. That's where all supply chains start in the earth. Oil and gas, fossil fuels, I would call that a supply chain too. It's very special in that energy is required to convert anything else from the earth into a product. Even energy is required to convert oil and gas into a product. You have to distill, you have to pump oil from the ground, distill it, refine it, uh, segregate it, transport it, put it into your car, use a pump to pump it into your engine. It all takes energy to even use energy. And the other source of what we have in life is agriculture, farming. Either, the animals we raise or the crops we grow. Maybe someday we do that in vats, but it's still going to take nutrients, minerals, and energy to stir the vats, heat the vats, control the temperature, pump the vats, filter them. So we've got three categories of where things come from. From the minerals, they can be made into ceramics, metals, chemicals. Oil and gas can be made into chemicals, plastics. Maybe they're combined with some minerals. Oil and gas and the minerals make us fertilizer, and of course, agriculture makes us various kinds of food. So, from those three categories minerals, oil and gas, and agriculture we make a whole slew of commodity like materials like copper, aluminum, zinc, chrome. I'm a metallurgist, so I can name off a lot of those. And, ammonium sulfate, plastics, polyurethane, polyethylene, fertilizers, ammonium nitrate, ammonium sulfate, potassium. Of course, food, you can name your own categories. And then from that kind of commodity level, we can do manufacturing. And manufacturing can be, welding, cutting, shaping, bending, folding, cutting. And I've also included in this, I did mention it, agriculture also has a category of wood is another one of the is both a source of energy and materials, and wood energy can be made into you know a wood house or something else. So with manufacturing we can make our final the top layer of parts, products, cars, consumer goods using raw materials that we got out of the ground, out of the minerals, and energy, mostly energy from fossil fuels. So when we do tariffs and we do it on the manufacturing area, like we put a tariff on steel and aluminum, that affects the cost of anything higher up on this chart. For instance, to make a car, you need metals, chemicals, plastics. And if you put a tariff on metals, chemicals, plastics, you'll make the cost of your car more expensive. It's fundamental, simple stuff. Now, Here's a very important part. Let's look at minerals in the lower left corner. Minerals can come from a mine inside of our country, like we can have a copper mine in Arizona or Minnesota. We can have a mine inside of another country that's our friend, like Canada, Mexico, European Union. Or you can have a mine that makes copper that's in a land that's not friendly to us, like rare earths that come out of China, or nickel that comes out of Russia. So our minerals come from our own land, from land with people that are friendly with us and land people that are not friendly with us. So if you want to control manufacturing, you need a supply of minerals in the lower left corner. It turns out that most of the mines in the world are controlled by China, Russia, so if we want to make anything, like right now, rare earths and neodymium is being controlled by China. Without neodymium, we can't make magnets, and magnets are needed for all sorts of control devices, all sorts of electronics. But without the neodymium from China, we're kind of screwed. And it turns out that we're kind of screwed on this lower left corner supply chain on almost every single mineral and almost every single metal, because we don't have many mines left in the U.S. Most of the mines in the world are not inside of our country. They're in charge in Africa, has a lot, Australia, Russia, but not United States. So if we want to have a strong manufacturing, we need minerals. And most of the minerals that we need are not in America. Where exactly does that put us if we want to make a car and we don't have enough steel or aluminum in the U.S.? We say, oh, we'll just build a steel plant or aluminum plant. One problem that we have is there's not a lot of people that know how to make a steel plant or aluminum plant or a copper plant, arsenic or antimony, bismuth, tellurium. We don't even know how to do that anymore. There's not many of us left that know how to do that live in America. And the ones that are really old dudes like me. So where does that leave us? It leaves us with a lot of ambitions to do manufacturing and bring it back to the United States. But we don't have the mines and minerals to make the metals, ceramics, chemicals, plastic, fertilizers that are used to make our cars and products and consumer goods. And we used to have some friends that we could get minerals and mining mining ores and concentrates from. But right now we're putting a tariff on even our friends. So anything that comes from that lower left corner is going to cost us more, which is going to mean everything above it is going to cost more. And exactly how that helps us, I'm not sure. If you want to use tariffs, maybe you use it in the lower left corner to try to encourage production of minerals. Maybe even bump up one layer and try to encourage the production of metals. But you can't start at the top with tariffs and try to increase production of cars and products and consumer goods. It's not going to work. You need the supply from the ground. Anyway, this is the Ancient Texan. I hope somebody in charge of our country looks at this simple supply chain basics or supply chains for dummies. One last comment here. What I've presented is very simple, and pardon me if I stated the obvious and you've wasted your time listening to this. Pardon me if I talk too slowly, and this is too simple. But if you want to address supply chains in the U.S., it's never going to be complicated, but it's going to be detailed as hell. If you start making spreadsheets, and even a spreadsheet could do this, you could build more sophisticated models and use AI to help you and all that good stuff. But you start out at the bottom with minerals, stuff that comes out of the ground, and that's your bottom layer. And that goes across, I'm guessing, on the order of a few hundred to 1,000 items. Maybe you can take care of most of the United States with, a few hundred on that base level. And then from that base level, your next layer on the spreadsheet is all the chemicals, the metals, fertilizers, the whole commodity. It's a little beyond commodities, but compounds, if you're a chemist. You got a whole nother layer there, and you not only draw, from the base level of the mines, you put a little note on there on how much energy that it takes to go from the bottom layer to the second layer. And then from the second layer, you combine all of those into, another level of complexity and, parts, motors, magnets, kind of first level equipment. And then from there you go up to a fourth layer and you do equipment. Maybe you do cars and tractors and trucks and steel beams and buildings, and anyway, you develop this whole thing up, and then at the top you have all sorts of every product you can imagine. That's like 10,000 steps across, and each of those layers take energy to move from the bottom up. And as we peak in energy, a lot of the stuff that we do is going to be done more locally and actually more labor. So that's going to counter the trend of AI. And all of this can be mapped out, and we can come up with a plan. And we can look and see where all these raw materials are located, where we need to be building mines, the mines that we need to, like there's a copper mine in Tucson that's been waiting for a permit for 20 years. We can wake people up and make them understand if our world is going to keep functioning, we have to dig holes in the ground. If you want to deal with climate change, got to dig holes in the ground. And if you want to make American manufacturing great again, you got to start with holes in the ground and build it up from the bottom up. There's no shortcut around that. And you have to build up the education to make that happen, and the expertise that we don't have. China's got a huge jump on us. And right now, what we've got, in defense is our financial system that facilitates money moving. But China is going around that with digital currency, and everybody else is going to go around that too after they saw what we did to Russia. We just took the money and we cut people off from SWIFT. That's going away. This is also going away because we're bankrupting ourselves with debt that we can't sustain. We should be increasing taxes on the top half of the people. And cutting expenses and simplifying our lives and going to a much more basic, people connected world, and quit living the Santa Claus Christmas thing where everybody needs more stuff. Instead of being the yacht capital of the world, we should aspire to be the human connection capital of the world. Anyway, this is the Ancient Texan. Hoping you have a good day, and I'm hoping somebody gets this basic stuff right and simplified and approaches it. Somebody needs some help figuring out how to plan this. This is not complicated. We don't have to remain this level of ignorance. We can actually plan out our future. Throw in there a plan for when tight oil starts nosediving. I think you notice we've got a serious problem on our hand, and we need to change the way we're living. The Great Simplification by a guy named Higgins, I think. He's got the basics right. Anyway, this is not hard, America, but it won't do itself. Anyway, this is the Ancient Texan. Hoping you have a good one. Please get on the ball here, America. Our kids are dependent on us.